So, before we tear off, if you will, into whatever it is that this week would seem to want to, it's kind of like every week seems to have that flavor of, that, driving, pulsating energy that wants to do something. The considerations of last week, which included a solar eclipse, the sun going into Pisces, and the Saturn-Neptune partile conjunction. Each of these carries a footprint, and the eclipse, it's a long footprint. It can last months. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which happens every 36 years, also carries a long footprint. And the sun going into Pisces, well, there's a month-long consideration to that. Each of us has to, in our own way, effectively tune into what is it that these long-range considerations from last week are putting on your table to pay attention to. I spent a lot more time looking into this last week that I'm not going to this week, and there are reasons for that. Go back to last week if you want to, dive into it a little more profoundly. As we consider the dance that this week has in store for us, different factors. On Monday, the moon goes out of bounds, which it does every time in the current cycle. It goes through these areas from late Taurus, early Gemini, into late Cancer, early Leo, and also when it goes through the Sagittarius Capricorn cycle. This being the south, this being the north. Well, the moon goes out of bounds in the northern version as we begin this week, Monday, and stays out of bounds until, what day? Till 28th, so Saturday. How do you feel? What are key words for the lunar part of any consideration? There's a capacity to sense things, that lunar prerogative of being able to effectively engage with self and others at just a little bit deeper level. So, to add just a little bit more of an excitement to this lunar consideration on this Monday, which is, by the way, a moon day, it's holding hands with Uranus, that shaker of stability, that rattling and rolling of, you know, potential discomfort that is trying to wake us up, to pay attention to things that we may have let slide by without giving them appropriate consideration. Now, there's a reason that I'm emphasizing that just a little bit more now, is because when we go to Tuesday, our Mars day, this is our first quarter moon, Pisces to Gemini. First quarter moon, crisis in action. What actions did last week's considerations stimulate that have, from the lunar perspective, reached some level where we have to ask ourselves, is the action that I'm taking related to what has been awakened, opened, offered as opportunity, appropriate? Are the actions that I decided to move on at the eclipse new moon working out as effectively as I thought they could or should? That's the crisis in action. Are the actions that I am taking right now the right ones that eclipse at 28 degrees of Aquarius presented? You remember, long footprint. So this first quarter moon, crisis in action, is something that, it's carrying some weight. It's not something that you can just slide on by and say, well, what the heck? Things are going to happen the way they're going to happen. True. But are you effectively tuned into what is transpiring to the point where you are playing a significant role in that experience? And, this week, when we get to Wednesday, which is Mercury's day, Mercury, you see, starts out the day 22 degrees, 32. You may not have noticed this because I haven't really mentioned it. Mercury's been slowing down. And here on Mercury's day, as we go through the day, Mercury turns retrograde. And will be retrograde for the next 3 weeks-ish. There are pundits who present the Mercury retrograde dance in a number of perhaps not so helpful ways that it functions. Because Mercury is our mind. It's how we think, how we communicate with ourselves and others. That while it is retrograde, may not be firing on all cylinders as well as we may want those thoughts and talks to unfold. But we have a responsibility, because Mercury, when it's doing its retrograde thing, it's moving into that area often that is between the sun and the earth. That is its retrograde cycle. Every time it goes retrograde, that's where it's going. And it may be north or south of that actual solar ball. But essentially, that apparent retrograde motion when the Earth seems to be moving a little bit faster than Mercury, so it appears to be moving backwards. We're tasked to do something that isn't generally in the flow of what we're used to. There are ways that actually function more efficiently for us, even during this Mercury retrograde period. The most helpful technique for any Mercury retrograde cycle to pay attention to is if there are things that you have been, thinking about doing, looking at, studying, considering. A Mercury retrograde cycle is an ideal time to dive deeper into what it is that, you can hopefully, without the overlay of the rest of the experience of being alive, be able to tune into with less disruptions. Not always a guarantee, but when Mercury goes retrograde, if prior to its retrograde cycle, is an ideal time to pull together, gather, if you will, material that you may have been considering, but perhaps haven't had the appropriate time to spend with, to really look deeper into, to try to organize as effectively as possible more information on what it is that you're curious about. That's one of the ideal things to do during a Mercury retrograde cycle. Let's also consider that Mercury right now is going through the sign of Pisces. We're in the Pisces season because the sun is also in Pisces. So what does Pisces represent? I pull up my astro discs because they're always a good way to consider things, bullet points. And I'm not often inclined to go to bullet points because like Pisces, the deeper and more profound considerations can be glossed over. Excuse me. Often too rapidly with a bullet point. And I don't exist at a bullet point level. Something may show up. I'm interested in what are the ramifications that are most relevant to that from the instant moment through the longer footprint moment of what that is opening up for consideration. So, Pisces, what kind of things does Pisces consider? Who is Pisces? We're in the Pisces season. Pisces is the mystic, the poet, the dreamer, the visionary, the artist, musician, psychic, and navigator. Bullet points. Each of those terms carries a much longer interpretation that I could go into, But I just want those general bullet points for all of us to sit with those. Could there be something, as Mercury goes retrograde for these next 3 weeks, that aspects of those particular bullet points might carry just a wee bit more focus or weight for us to look into? Because Mercury's going to be in Pisces for this whole retrograde cycle. And it starts out, actually, I think just looking at where the sun is, the sun's going to be in Pisces through that whole dance time as well. Sun is our vitality. Pisces often gets relegated to the background. Now, the reasons for this are that in our modern cultural haste to accomplish something, do something, be somewhere, go somewhere, the realm of Pisces, which asks us to sit with something and allow it to settle into us at deeper and deeper levels. That psychic awareness can open up the potential for spiritual levels of awakening to transpire, that the rat race of the human endeavors clutters, throws up roadblocks, puts things in the way of our tuning in at the deeper, more internal level that is part of each and every one of us. This is a point to take into consideration as we go through this current Mercury retrograde cycle. Where is it that you have cordoned off a particular location within yourself to hide that spiritual part of you? It's still there. But right now there's a potential invitation to, crack open, even if just a little bit, a look within that part of you that, there's so many different ways I can take this, has been waiting for your presence to participate in aspects of why you as a soul incarnated here on earth at this time. I have other factors that I really want to talk about. We'll come back to it. We get to Thursday. On Thursday, as Thursday becomes Friday, Mars moves into that same square that all these planets were doing before with Uranus. That 27 degrees of Aquarius and 27 degrees of Taurus. if I were to try, make an attempt, if you will, to paint this particular aspect, square aspect is, generally it is challenging. As something less challenging, it would not be honorable or appropriate to allow this to just slide on by. Think of Martian energy, impulse, driving, reckless, technically warring kind of energies being rattled, if you will, by Uranus, which is shake, rattle, and roll, revolutionary energies trying to awaken us in very dynamic fashion to aspects that we have hidden from ourselves or have been hidden from us that we're discovering. And there's a reason I'm bringing that up, because there are astrological patterns, the patterns that charts go into. I'm going to see if I can create another chart. No, that's not going to work. Let's do a new chart. There. Okay. There, I just did a chart for the now, based on, because it's Sunday today. Now, the reason that I did this is because the chart pattern that is set up is referred to as a bowl or locomotive. And the fact that the planets, as they rotate around the chart, we'll call this a bowl, because everything is within half of the chart. And a bowl represents a kind of it's a focused kind of energy on half of the chart experiences, where the other half, which is basically from, Capricorn through Cancer, the focus is not as, tuned in, if you were, to that kind of energy. And in this pattern, what you look at, or can look at, is the lead planet. And the lead planet is the one that's here. And why do they call that planet the lead planet? Because what it's based on is it's based on the daily movement of the planets. As, the world turns, what planet is leading everybody. Let me just back this up a little bit. Okay. This is like, right now, this is sunrise moment. Hey, 6:07 on Sunday. Pluto is just rising above the horizon, the lead planet. And as we go through the day, hour by hour, look at that. Pluto, right there in the lead. Pluto is the lead planet. And what the lead planet represents is the lead planet represents an energy that is basically leading the charge of the daily experience that wants to, in some fashion, make sure that we are paying attention to what it stands for. And we're in a current cycle whereby Pluto in the lead may not be the most comfortable lead planet for all factors that are afoot. Go back to my dailies again. This is also part of a relatively long footprint. And I say that because you can kind of see all the planets, they're all conjoined in this half of the chart. And this has been for a while and will be for a while one of the factors that we should keep in mind, that Pluto, as the engine of the locomotive, every day says in its Aquarian fashion, I want to wake you up to something that has to do with the collective, with community, that in my, meanderings, I have become aware of certain factors that, for whatever reason, have been kept from you, buried deep within some level of hidden realm that, from the Pluto's perspective, I would like to bring to the surface right now and make you aware of this, because I think it would behoove all of us to tune into aspects of our community substance that has been hidden from us, that has been applied in such fashion as to dissolve, if you will, that communal awareness by keeping from us aspects of what community can and does represent as an integral part of why we're here on Earth right now. Do you sense the potential for more of a community development transpiring now? In a way, that's kind of an essay question, because my sensing, and perhaps yours as well, is that there seems to be some kind of energetic wedge that is being applied to our everyday living experience to keep us from engaging with one another at the community level. This is part of a plan, a longer range plan. To control us. It's much harder when a community comes together and starts comparing notes with one another for outside influences to be able to get in there and muck around and stir things up to the point where we don't trust one another and therefore cannot, effectively join in the potential communal presence, which is a very natural step for all living beings. Many different levels of community at work simultaneously. Let's see, what else we got going? Okay, we're up to the square of Mars and Uranus. On this very same day, Venus, chugging along here in Pisces, is going to basically hook up, conjoin with that Mercury retrograde. Who is Venus? Venus is exalted in Pisces, which means that it's really happy to be there. There's something, here's something for you to ponder. From the Venusian perspective of our ability to connect with each other, this is very Venusian. In the realm of Pisces, part of the aspects that come to the surface at this level of spiritual connection with one another really has a substantial carrying capacity of parts of ourselves that often don't get enough exposure. So this Venus coming into contact with our Mercury retrograde, you have to ask yourself, are there aspects of my thinking and communication right now that my engagement with others is going to radically assist in an expansion of why we came together? Or am I going to be so cloistered and hidden away from the experience of engaging with others that I cannot be bothered? This is a possibility with that Mercury retrograde, because picture this. Life is a storyline that we live from moment to moment to moment. And as we engage with one another, aspects of our life story are going to surface. Now, there are certain creative type people who make things up all the time. And they do it to such an extent that they aren't really engaging in the truth all the time. I met Sally the other day, or I met Tom, and Sally and I have this story going. Tom and I have a very different story going. And, then we come to a gathering where Sally and Tom are both there. And the stories that we've been living with each of them is different, because when we're with each of them, a version of, so-called truth has been shared with each of them that from the story perspective doesn't reflect aspects of who I really am every time I come together with either one of them. This is up for consideration during this particular conjunction of Venus and that Mercury retrograde. Am I living at a level of truth all the time? that the stories that I'm sharing with Sally and Tom are the same. Can you sense that when Mercury and Venus come together this week, this next weekend, that you might be caught within a lie that is not a reflection of the truth of you? This is in Pisces. This is the deepest, most profound level of interaction capacity that you have with spirit and soul. Is that what's being allowed to come through you? Or have you been led astray somewhere along the way, and at the same time are leading others astray by not sharing at a true level what it is that is actually taking place in your everyday experience? The invitation is there. Think back to, what is that lead planet Pluto right now at the community level asking every one of us to be aware of? See, the planets don't function in segregated little boxes from each other. They're all happening at the same time. And if you tune in to the celestial dance process, we're all invited all the time to function on multiple different levels, to awaken within ourselves and each other factors of honesty and truth that right now is being emphasized at the community level. And it's going to continue to be that way. Right now, with all the planets in that half of the chart, the moon, our quickest mover of all of them, it's going to pass up Jupiter by the end of the week and move out into that so-called empty space on the side of the chart opposite from where all the rest of the planets are. As it does that, the image will change from a bowl to a locomotive to a bucket. These are all different flavors. And then it's going to come back around and it's going to join in with all those other planets, and we'll have another one of those opportunities where the bowl or the bundle is in play with Pluto at the helm, asking us to pay attention to each other, to processes that are surfacing in our everyday life. And right now, I think probably one of the main factors of this week is that Mercury going retrograde for the next 3 weeks. Time to investigate factors that we don't normally go through the process of investigating. As I sit with this image behind me, these beings dancing and drumming around a fire, I want you to feel a plutonic energy erupting from the earth in flame. And these beings, this communal surround, celebrating the process of togetherness as they recognize that something is being born that potentially has been hidden from us, and asking us to recognize our individual parts in this communal dance to awaken a part of us that somehow has been slumbering way too long. This has relevance for the potential of aiming civilization in a new direction that I would think we've been led astray from recognizing our group participation can accomplish. It's not going to be easy, but the benefits for all of life are there. That's all I got for this week. Yeah, that's all I got for this week. If anybody wants a chart reading, I am available. Ciao.